Hello and welcome. This is today's painting. If you want to follow along, you will need a few items. You will need 2 containers of water, 1 container for washing your brush and 1 container for getting your fresh clean water. You'll need some watercolor paper. 100% cotton is the best one to use. You'll need brushes. I used a number 10 and a number 6 round brush that come to a sharp point, but you can also use a smaller brush for those details in the tree if you want to. You need a kitchen towel or a cloth. I'm using a microfiber cloth. This is just to dab off any excess water or paint on your paintbrush, so you have full control over how much water is on your paintbrush at all times. You'll need a paint with a big tonal range. So up in the right hand corner you can see 2 swatches of paint. One that goes from really dark to really light. The other one goes from like a mid-range to very light. Now you want as much range as possible. You want to be able to get those really dark values. I also use painter's tape to tape down my sheet of paper. You can either tape it onto the table or a clipboard like I'm using. I like to have the clipboard because if I need to move it, I don't have to then remove it from the table. I can just remove the whole clipboard. I just find it easier, but do whatever works for you. So I've already taped my paper down to my clipboard. So I will start now with my number 10 brush and just wet the whole paper. We're starting with the sky, and this is one of those really simple landscape that you will be able to master in 1 or 2 tries, and I just like this a lot. And because you only need 1 color, it is a great painting to start with as well. So I'm just laying down some horizontal lines with color and just keeping it light, a light wash of color that is maybe a little bit darker at the top. Remember, from a third from the top, we're starting with mountains, so we don't want too much variation underneath there, but just make it look somewhat fluid. I'm just here using my microfiber towel to lift up a bit of paint in the areas that I want white, so those would be the clouds usually. After that is dry, you can go in with a smaller brush or the big brush if you prefer, if your piece is bigger, and you just go in with a very light value of that paint, and you go along and you just create that mountain ridge. You can do this as you have seen on a picture or just how you want it. A quick tip with just to make it look cohesive, go for the same amount of jaggedy that you have in the first line and the second, third, and maybe even more lines, because if you have some really smooth, gentle slopes in the background, and then suddenly in the foreground you have this massive, like, big spike of a mountain, it might not look too natural. So I just prefer to layer after layer just build up and make each layer a little bit darker and just wash it away. Well, not wash it away, but you start with the most concentrated paint of that layer, and then you add a little bit more water the further down you go. And to not get any harsh edges, the easiest way that I have found to do this is to just use water all the way down to the bottom edge of the painting. It will take a little bit longer to dry, but at that point you know that you won't get any harsh lines that might interfere with your future layers. Another thing to note is that this paint does not reactivate when it's dry on the paper. If yours does, then it's probably not a huge deal, but it's something that you might want to be aware of, and you don't want to be overworking layers with the dark colors too much, because if you then go over it again and again with water and a wet brush, you might scrub loose that paint underneath and it will for some bizarre reason go lighter, and that's just because you're removing paint from that area that hasn't been removed in other areas, and it might not be the look that you're going for, but if it is, you know, if you want a lighter area, you can go in with a damp clean brush and just lift off, just as I did there. You saw I dabbed off a little bit on my towel just to remove some of the color right there. Now this is my last layer, so I'm using very dark paint, not very much water, and just laying that down there. And now I will use the same amount of darkness in the paint to make a tree. And you can do this as simple, as easy as you want. I went maybe a little bit overboard, but yeah, you can even have it in the middle, you can have it on the side, you can have the whole tree showing, you can just have some branches like I do. It's all up to you really, but I like the effect that I got here, and I am still using my number 10 round brush because the point of this one is just really good, and I can get those fine details even with a number 10. So it's a very good brush. But if yours does not come to as nice pointy end, then you might want to use a thinner one, maybe maybe a 0, maybe a 1. You just have to experiment with what you have, see what works for you of what you have. If it absolutely doesn't work, you might be able to get a smaller brush or a more pointy brush. This is the Escoda brushes that are the travel set, and I am very much liking them. They come apart and you can just clip on the back end of it that makes it longer. You basically pull it apart in two and then cover the bristles of your brush, and it's got a little hole in the end to make airflow sufficient to dry them, and it's really good. The paint here is from a small company in India called Blue Pine Arts. I am very much liking this color. I'm liking their paints in general, and yeah, they are very nice. I found them on Etsy. I can definitely recommend them as a very nice homemade, well, handmade paint brand. And this is what I mean about me going a bit overboard with my tiny little details. But I figured that some areas were a bit empty, some areas were just one directional, and I wanted to add a few branches in another direction. You just go with it and do what feels best for your painting. Every painting will be different. Here I start noticing that my tape has loosened from the clipboard, but that's no problem. I just reattach it, smooth it out. It's just so that my paper dries flat, and I just put a book on top of it when it was dry, and it dried all flat. I hope you have enjoyed painting along, and if you didn't paint along, I hope you enjoyed the video. Here is the finished painting, and I am quite pleased with it. Tell me what you think in the comments. Thank you. Bye.